Good morning. I think it's actually afternoon. It's definitely afternoon. Good afternoon. I look very naked right now because I don't have my glasses on. It's strange to look at myself now without my glasses, but the studio lighting setup thing that I have, it just bounces off the glasses too much. So we're going glasses free for this video, but this is my October wrap up. Spooky season's over. I'm counting November as like extended spooky season, but I read so many horror books. Annoyingly, one of the horror books that I was reading to try and finish yesterday on the last day of the month, I didn't quite get to finish, so you're gonna get at least one more horror book in the November wrap up, but I'm so excited to go through these books. So let's talk about the 10 books I read in October. Okay, the first book that I started the month off with is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Bayron. This feels so long ago that I read this now. October just felt like it was never ending, which is just the best. This is a YA camp slasher. It follows a group of teenagers who are working at this camp slasher simulator that basically creates an experience like you're in a horror film, and then it turns out that they actually kind of are in one. This was great fun if you are into slasher as a genre and something that pays homage to that genre. This was just spot on. It was really short, so it was really fast paced. Lots of drama, lots of big moments. I found it really fun, really exciting, very high stakes. Obviously quite gory at times, being a slasher book. It was a fun time. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Shining, which I've been wanting to read for so long. This is by Stephen King. This is following a family who moved to a very isolated hotel to look after it over the winter, and in doing so start to get a little bit of cabin fever, as well as some other things happening and some strange haunting elements to this hotel. This is also a film adaptation that I had watched when going into the reading of this book. Usually I do prefer to read the book first, but I watched the film years and years and years and years ago, and I did enjoy the film, but I think I definitely preferred the book. The characters I felt were a lot more fleshed out in the book, and I liked them a lot more, whereas in the film, I don't really feel like, having now read the book, I don't feel like the casting was the best choice personally for the film. It just feels like they don't quite fit who we get to know in the book. So I did enjoy the film, but I definitely much preferred the book. The book just felt like it really dug into quite a lot of different topics. It set the scene a lot more. It made me feel the kind of isolated strangeness in connection with the characters and how they were feeling it, rather than just as an observer, and I think it did a really great job of doing that. Do check out the trigger warnings for any of these, by the way, because pretty much all of these, apart from like one, are horror, and just there's a lot, so do that. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The House at Fantom Park by Graham Masterton. I've got rid of my copy, so I can't show you a picture of it. What is happening with my hair? It's going everywhere. I did not like this book. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. I have unhauled it. That's where it kind of sits for me. I just felt like the premise was cool, but it did not get executed very well. It was following a group of people who were renovating or looking to renovate this old abandoned military hospital, and the military hospital is naturally haunted. So we've got the hauntings going on, we have the renovation attempting to happen, there's a little bit of a history being woven in, and it just didn't execute well, I don't think. I found the main character incredibly frustrating. It was very much giving women written by men vibes, which was really annoying. And just generally there was a lot that made me mad that I don't think needed to be in there at all. The dialogue felt clunky, it just didn't build in the way that I thought it would. I think it had a really cool premise, and the horror elements did build up to something that was not half bad, but then it just kind of ruined it with other things, so yeah, fell flat a bit. 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read my first Junji Ito book, Usumaki. This is following a town who have become obsessed with spirals. I will never look at a spiral in the same way again. This is incredibly unsettling. It's incredibly strange. The journey that we go on in this book is one that is completely bizarre, and I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It just felt absolutely nonsensically brilliant, and I love it when a book does that, but still pulls you in. Like, I think sometimes when you go down the kind of completely bizarre route, you can lose touch a little bit with the reader along the way, but I definitely felt invested in this the whole way through. It kind of set itself up in a way of like lots of little short stories that wove together, and I liked that element as well, and how we had some of the same characters linking all of those stories together. It was a good time. Definitely a strange time, but a good time, and a 4 out of 5 star time. Then I read Red Dust, White Snow. This is by Pan Hooting. This was one I read for episode 9 of Cover to Cover, so if you want to see my full thoughts on that, I will link it up there. This is a book that is kind of looking at the difference between reality and dreams slash a virtual world, and the questions there from society and the future that we're heading towards. Honestly, this one wasn't quite for me. I think it went over my head a little bit. I mean, I was trying to keep up with it, but at times it just felt like it was going too whimsy to actually cling on to what the plot was meant to be. The structure of the story itself felt a little bit disjointed, I would say, and jumpy, which I found removed me from the story as a reader. It wasn't all bad. I did like the dream element. I liked the fact that we had that fantastical anything can happen, and I always do like it when books have that kind of a story because it just feels like you are literally reading one of your own dreams. It didn't really hit for me. I could see that it was an interesting book, and I think for somebody else this could be a favourite, but for me it just didn't quite hit, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. This is the book that my mum said has scared her the most out of any book she's read. This is following based on true events. This is following a family who move into a haunted house, and 28 days later they flee. I thought that this had great premise. The start of it was interesting. We were setting it up quite well. We got like floor plans of the house, which was great. And then it just felt very repetitive. And obviously this is based on something that people have said actually did happen to them. So you can't really embellish on something that has already been told. But it did feel like it was like, okay, they got woken up in the night at this time, and then it happened again the next night, and then it happened again the next night, and the next night, and it was like, okay, right, we're just getting the same situation again and again and again. And I think for that reason I felt more bored than I did the atmosphere building up. It was fine. It didn't scare me. It did give me one little chill moment, but overall it was just okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Another just okay in the horror category is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. This is one that I've been wanting to read for so long. This is following somebody who is going to do some work at an old house and ends up getting involved in the hauntings that is going on there from The Woman in Black. I have watched the film for this, but I couldn't really remember it. I listened to the audiobook for this, which was a theatrical audiobook recording, which was definitely an interesting way to go about it. At times I felt it was distracting, however other times I felt like I was even more absorbed in it, and the sound effects made it feel creepier because when I was listening with my headphones in, it made the sound like it was coming from somewhere over there, which was quite freaky when listening to an audiobook alone in my house. So I did like that side of it, but I felt like overall it didn't quite grab me in the way that I wanted it to. The ending, however, completely shocked me. Did not remember how the film ended, so I didn't know what direction it was going to go in, and I think that side of it did redeem it a little bit for me, so I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. Then I read Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so I had high expectations for this, not to put the achievements of Stephen King onto Joe Hill, but I just feel like Joe Hill is gonna, have been brought up around a lot of horror and probably consumes a lot of horror, presumably by the fact that they've written some horror. This is following a retired musician who buys a ghost on the internet that tries to push him out of his home and basically ruin his life. This goes on a journey. It's one of those books that the blurb tells you what's going to happen for like the first chapter or two, and then it just goes off on one, and I loved it for that. It was so much fun. I had such a great time with this. If you've watched the Foo Fighters horror film Studio 666, I think you'll really like this, and if you watched that film and enjoyed it, I should say, you'll really like this. It just had that great fun vibe about it whilst having the kind of references to music and the main character like talking about his past experiences as well as like everything that was happening now. It felt great. It felt fun. I really liked the characters. I think they were really great to follow. They were definitely characters that you saw a lot of development from, and their relationships grow within this book, which I really enjoyed. I had a good time with it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The OA WJA, which is a graphic novel by Magdalene Visaggio and Jen St. Onge. This is following a group of school kids who accidentally unleashed the OA WJA, who is a bad force that tries to take over their town, and they have to try and right their wrongs. This is very wholesome, it's very fun, it feels like a very welcoming book. There is loads of rep in this book. It just felt like such a good, fun, cute horror in graphic novel form, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to know these characters and seeing what it was that motivated them, what it was that worried them, and how that all came together in the end for this. I loved how ultimately this was about a love for friendship and the power of friendship, and how that unity is just such a big strength. I just love this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read probably the pièce de résistance of the month. This was so good. This is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, who is the author of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which I read probably when I was back at uni, many years ago. This is very chunky, and I think I read this in 3 days, so that shows you how good it was. 3 or 4 days. It was a very short amount of time for a chunky book. This is following a mum and her son who moved to a new small town to try and get away from their past, and there is something very strange happening in that small town that gets stranger and stranger as the book goes on, and I just loved it. I loved the relationship between the mum and the son and how it was about their relationship a lot of the time and their love and support for each other and what that meant for the overall plot. I also really enjoyed the little stories that we got to see emerging throughout this as well. It kept me hooked completely. The intrigue of the horror element built and was both a physical and a psychological element of horror, which I really liked because I think it just kind of, it hit you at all angles to be able to really make you feel the atmosphere and really just be absorbed in the book. I had such a good time reading this. It so nearly got a 5-star from me. The ending for me was going all over the place, that I felt a tiny little bit lost with the ending. So I felt less satisfied at the end than I wanted to because there was just purely so much happening. But I still think it was an absolutely fantastic book. I loved it. It didn't scare me, but I just think it had that great build up and atmosphere that I wanted from a horror in October. So I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did nearly finish All Hallows by Christopher Golden, and I'm so annoyed that I didn't manage to finish that to include it in this vlog because it's just the perfect October read. It is set on Halloween night. I am loving it, but I have about 100 pages left, or just under 100 pages left. I thought I was going to finish it yesterday, but a lot more ended up happening yesterday than I expected, so I didn't quite manage to get it in for the October wrap-up. So that is coming in my November wrap-up because I think I'm not going to like push myself to have to finish it today. I just want to enjoy it because I'm really having a good time. But if you want a recommendation for next Halloween or just any point, at the moment, it's sitting really strong as a high recommendation for something to read on Halloween because it's set on Halloween night. It's got all the trick-or-treating, it's got the parties, it's got haunted house, or haunted woods, I should say. It's really fun at the moment. I can't speak for how it's going to end. Definitely very dark, lots of trigger warnings. Look those up if you feel that you would need to. But I am really enjoying that. I've kind of just partially wrapped it up. It will be in my November wrap-up, but just as a like honourable mention because I read pretty much most of it in October. So that was my October wrap up. 10 books / an honorary extra 1 book in All Hallows. 10 books read. I had a great reading month. I was worried at the start of the month that I was feeling a little bit slumpy, but I think I pulled out of it. I read lots of good horror. I'm just really enjoying discovering horror as a genre and have been over like the last 3 years or so. It's just so fun and expansive and dramatic and suspenseful and tense, and I love it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much to my Patreons for making every video possible. I will see you in the next one.